Raptors. It is the month of May, which means it is Asian Heritage Month, and we will be talking about diversity and inclusion specifically when it comes to the Asian community in the game that we love, called basketball. I know, shocker. Paul Jones and Sherman Hamilton will be joining us a little bit later, but right now we have Alex Wong, a writer and author, book coming out in October, by the way, and Will Liu, lead reporter at Yahoo Sports Canada. Thanks for coming on and talking about and having this conversation, guys. How are you guys feeling?
Feeling great. Thanks for having us, Savanna.
Yeah, this is great. We just had you on our show, so it's the tables have turned.
Oh, I know. I said just before we got on how the turns tables. My favorite line, probably, honest, in The Office. But let's get right into it. So in an interview with The Undefeated, Deputy Commissioner Mark Tatum, he highlighted the Raptors as an organization for being a role model amongst the league for diversity. He said, when you have an African president, a woman executive, and a person of color as a general manager, referring to Bobby Webster, you win a championship. So, Will, I'm going to go to you first for this. Why is it so important to have representation in NBA front office positions across the league?
I think it's important for two reasons. I think number one, the game has gone global, right? Like we saw back-to-back number one picks come from Toronto. We've seen the rookie of the year come from Slovenia. We've seen the two-time MVP come from Greece by way of Nigeria. And we've seen excellence at our own front office between Bobby Webster, who's Hawaiian, and Masai Ujiri, who's Nigerian. I think as the game goes global, naturally the best executives are going to also expand that pool of candidates they reach from. And you're going to see the front office start to become more global, more diverse that way as well. And I think number two, it's important because the NBA is a very public-facing product, right? It's literally an entertainment product, one of the most successful in the world, and it reaches people in hundreds of countries. So I think that it's very important in any sort of forward-facing company. There's a social responsibility that comes from representing for people who not only play the game, but also people who are watching the game and be reflective of that and to sort of project that onto the rest of the world. So it's important for two fronts. You want the best people and you want to showcase, the best that the world has to offer.
I think Will makes a lot of good points there too. And to just piggyback off that, if you're looking at just the Raptors specifically, and you'll look at what the organization's been able to do under the leadership of Masai Ujiri and, putting more women in positions of power and having more really just diverse and more inclusive thinking when it comes to decision making. And I think kind of like what Will said, basketball is this kind of front-facing public product. And I think it's really good for organizations to be able to have more diversity at the decision making level, because, at the end of the day, when we're here talking about, issues related to diversity and inclusiveness, these organizations can set a really good example, because the importance of having diversity in the room of people who are like calling the shots and making decisions is important across, all different industries. And I think sports can set and the Raptors in particular and the NBA can set a really good example with that.
And I think it's been said multiple times before in the past, like when you have diversity in front office positions, and no matter which work environment you work in, you cover your blind spots. That's what it really is, to me at least. You start to see things that you may not have considered in before, because you have eyes that focus on that think about that. But I want to narrow in a little bit, because we have former Raptor Jeremy Lin, and Alex, I'm going to start with you on this one. He spoke out about the comments that he received while playing in the G League bubble. Now, this one actually pulls on my heartstrings, because basketball is supposed to be a safe space on the court. But were you surprised to hear that he was hearing those comments from a league, that prides itself on diversity and inclusion?
Yeah, no, not surprised at all. I think, Jeremy, since playing in high school or college, has been dealing with, hearing racial slurs, whether it's from fans or from opposing players. And, I think Jeremy obviously is the most popular Asian basketball player, but this is something that I think all Asians have to deal with, and all minorities, have to deal with, playing sports or in other arenas where, sometimes they're made to feel not as welcomed. And, I know kind of in the recent months, because of the rise in the Asian hate crimes, it's become kind of a mainstream topic for a lot of people. And I think it's important, we're using this platform and we're having this conversation to just kind of point out to people too that these things have been happening for a very long time, right? And I think just because it's come into the focus now, we shouldn't think of it as something that's new. These are problems that have existed, and obviously the conversation goes beyond just sports and beyond just basketball. But I think that's one point that I really wanted to get across, is that no, not surprised at all, and that these are things that have been happening. And I don't think there's a single Asian person who hasn't dealt with, including Will and I, who hasn't dealt with, having, racial comments, thrown at us, like, still today.
Yeah, I don't think you can have an honest and productive conversation about racism or biases without, just being honest about the reality of the situation. And Alex is absolutely right. Obviously, right now, there's been a huge spike in hate crimes in the States, in Canada. And that is just really devastating and traumatizing to watch, especially when you see some of these incidents. A lot of this happening against the elderly community, who are perhaps the most defenseless out of every group that we have. And it's really just a shame. But I really do commend Jeremy for one thing, is that, being in the public spotlight, especially to the scale that he is, there's such a huge responsibility that comes with it. And I think Jeremy has really, over time, embraced that opportunity to represent for a group. It's not easy whatsoever. But I think he did a good job of that. And I like that he didn't necessarily out the specific G League player, because I think that, I don't know, canceling that one G League player and ending his career, I don't know if that necessarily was going to change anything specific about the situation. Whereas I think Jeremy took the opportunity to try to educate people on this. And whether it reaches people or not, I think he's done a lot of work in this area. And I think that's probably what I would hope to see from a lot of Asian leaders, is to be honest about your experiences and to try to tackle them head on. Absolutely.
And then, to both of your points, Jeremy Lin, he's a great role model in how you can educate people, as you guys were saying. And it's interesting because, as media, when Linsanity blew up, there's examples now of systemic racism that came to the forefront in ways that certain media outlets covered his success. I really don't want to get into the details, but he actually took the time to take somebody aside and educate them. He actually took them out to lunch when they made a racist remark towards him in a media outlet coverage. But, that being all said, Will, I'll go back to you. How can we, as media, drive the conversation so that basketball is an inclusive environment, not only for Asian players, but for also fans of Asian descent as well?
Honestly, I think this question gets posed a lot. I think a lot of organizations are asking themselves this question. I think it's great to ask yourself, how can you include more people? The simple answer is just include more people, period. It's not that hard. I think when you make the space for something, people, especially in the audience, will see it and appreciate it. It doesn't necessarily have to be overt or in your face. I think a great example of this, and Savanna, you were part of it, the all-women's Raptors broadcast. That was historic. You were great on it. The other women that were included were great on it. And I think that, that was the space that the Raptors made. And I think that that's something that, a lot of teams can do, similar, acts of intentionally making spaces. And also I think that in terms of just the NBA as a whole, I mean, again, it's such a global product. So when you're able to put a platform and use the NBA to sort of spread that word, I think it reaches a lot of people. Like, if you look at the Black Lives Matter movement, the NBA was heavily involved and very heavily in support of it. And listen, the NBA playoffs are watched in hundreds of countries. And I think a lot of countries were probably exposed to this. I think a lot of countries were receiving this message and spreading awareness. And that's something that the NBA has a real power in doing. So I really hope the NBA takes the same approach with other topics as well.
Yeah, I think from a media standpoint too, when you talk about basketball and, Will talking about how we all know that the audience for consuming the NBA and basketball is one of the most diverse across all different sports. And the thing that I always challenge editors and organizations at different publications is, the people covering it should reflect that as well. When you talk about, I think Will made a really good point about the all women's broadcast. And, all the work that the Raptors and all these organizations have done with the Black Lives Matter movement, celebrating Black History Month. And of course, we're talking here today about Asian Heritage Month. It's that we can celebrate and put women on and put Black creatives on and put Asian creatives on when it's not the month that's being designated to them, right? Like, Savanna, you're still a woman any other month, even when it's not being celebrated, and you still face the same challenges. Black people still face the same challenges. The calendar is going to turn to June? I can't keep track during a pandemic. It's going to be June next month. And Will and I are still going to be Asian, and these are still topics that we're still going to be talking about. So I think the challenge is always for the media. It should never feel like you're doing something just because you feel like you're checking off a box. Like, you have to actually understand the value of actually having diversity in the room. So that's the one thing that I hope people can get from this.
A little louder in the back, Alex, a little louder in the back. I was like, yes, we're going to be the same people of who we are next month, in December, in October. Doesn't matter, right? And yeah, and I appreciate what you guys are saying there. And one thing to Jeremy Lin's point as well, like, it's great that he's on a platform, he can educate people, but it's also not his responsibility. He's just taking that on from his own will. It is the responsibility of people in the media. And you're right, Alex and Will, like, the voices of who are telling the stories as well, they matter. It matters because that way, once again, going back to blind spots, you're not miscovering. You're doing it in an authentic, genuine manner. Moving on, I want to get a little bit more personal with you guys. And Alex, I'll start with you on this one. But as Asian men yourself, what challenges and barriers do you feel like you've had to overcome in this industry to succeed?
Yeah, I think because, Will and I, and obviously other Asians in this space, we operate in such a predominantly white space that I feel like a lot of times when we deal with editors and people at different publications, there's not really kind of like a template or baseline of, how people view us. People choose to not view us as just like fully formed writers, as maybe other people are. I found from my personal experiences that, I've dealt with specific publications or editors who will only reach out to me when there is an Asian story. Kind of, I think about when, Daryl Morey and the controversy after he sent the tweet, about the Hong Kong protests, and, I had so many people that I've never worked with, reach out to me because they wanted to put an Asian name on a byline. And, to me, being someone from Hong Kong, and that's a very kind of personal and obviously a political issue, I just felt like that was unfair, because number one, why didn't you ever reach out to me when you just wanted to talk about basketball? And number two, you can't just rely on Asian voices, or again, I'm going to expand this to Black voices, to women, when it is an issue that is in the mainstream, right? So I think that's the one thing is that I think a lot of us just want to be viewed through the same lens as everyone. We just want equal opportunity. And, when we do fight for those and we call out those blind spots, like you mentioned, and ask for those equal opportunities, suddenly we're viewed as difficult. And I don't think that's fair. And, I think it goes back to what you were saying about Jeremy Lin. Why is Jeremy the only person that's speaking out, right? He's obviously the most popular person in terms of the Asian community in basketball, but like, where are his allies? Like I want to know, the people who are actually in positions of power who can affect change. Like, they should be speaking up just the same as Jeremy. And I think that goes the same with how publications deal with Asian writers.
Yeah, look, an inside joke me and Alex have is we have a running tally every season of how often we get confused for one another, and it's offensive mostly because Alex is like 10 years older than me.
Yeah, I thought we were gonna make it through one thing together without you making fun of me. All right.
Yeah, well, we couldn't, but no, I think Alex said a lot of great things there, and I think really the one thing I have to add is when you enter a room that doesn't look like you whatsoever, you're always going to stand out, and it's always going to make you feel very strange and make you feel out of place. And when you go into a hiring process, when you are someone who doesn't look like what people have traditionally seen from that position, or people who realistically have an implicit bias to specifically select after a specific type of person, that's always going to be difficult. And that's not necessarily unique to experience as Asian men. I think that's probably the case for most people of color who try to enter these established businesses. It's probably the same for women. There's not a lot of women covering the team. And you have to wonder if there's same opportunities have been made for women to do so. And the same thing for people of different sexualities and things like this. So, it's really just hard to overcome that first hurdle. And again, it's really just, if companies want to make changes, and they become aware of these things, just make the change, just take a chance. And again, really just try to hire the best people, because realistically, you know, this is just like sports itself. You're trying to select for the best people, right? So who's going to ask the best question? Who's going to write the best story? Who's going to have, you know, the best thing to say, the best analysis, things like that? Who's going to put the work in for all that stuff? And when you really put everything into equal playing field, I think everyone could live with the results. But I think that so far, you know, if we're going to be realistic about it, the playing field has never been really even.
No, and that's from years and years and years of systemic racism that's just been perpetuated through multiple different industries on multiple different fronts. So, I mean, we could talk about this conversation, and thank you guys so much for sharing your truth. And the whole time, I'm just like clapping over here. Like, it's crazy how much I relate to what you guys are saying, just being a Black woman myself. But, you know, you guys have your own experiences and stories as Asian men. And thank you for sharing and being vocal leaders in this matter. We're going to head now to some sound from our team, the Raptors.
In this moment, I think what we're seeing is in its early stages, just a huge push for awareness. And that's part of why we're doing this. And that's part of why we're talking about it, whether it's the shootings that happened in Atlanta, or, you know, a lot of the discrimination probably felt since the beginning of COVID, you know, overt in the case of violence, or it was just kind of, you know, underneath the surface in comments or attitudes toward Asians. I think that's the big one is the awareness of it. And as we bring this to light, then we can start to move on and think about how to fix it and have solutions. And obviously those are, you know, much more difficult and much more nuanced. But I think right now it's the awareness to it that it's been going on. Like Roven said, it's part of the culture is to not bring attention to it or sweep it under the rug. So no, let's step out. Let's not do that, and let's tell everybody. Let's make sure people know about it. If you are in a position, or if you're the media, or if you have a platform, let's get that out.
You know, when it comes to stereotypes, it's about being human. You know, we all breathe the same air. We all put our clothes on the same way. It's about what the condition of your heart is. I've been fortunate to be on the receiving end of a lot of love and support along my journey. I feel it's disrespectful for me to hate anybody on their journey along that way. So it doesn't matter to me what culture or ethnicity you come from. If you're part of, you know, particularly of a basketball community, it's all love there. You know, it's all about supporting each other. It shouldn't be about hating one person over another because they look different than you.
部分があったんですけど、やっぱりもっとこうやっていろんな人の声を聞いて、どういう状況が今起こっているのか、そのアジア人の中でアジアアメリカンの中でどういう差別をみんなが受けているのかっていうのをもっと知って、僕もNBA のアスリートとしてもっと声を上げていかなきゃいけないんじゃないかっていうのは最近すごく思うようになりました。
And let's just get into our Jif and Smucker's ultimate teammate moments, and it makes complete sense for us to talk about Yuta Watanabe, who exudes everything that you want in a teammate. I know if I was playing basketball, I'd want this guy on my team. He gives of himself defensively. He sacrifices his body. He's a person who's willing to let everybody else succeed before him. And when it's time to take his own, he takes his own, and he embodies everything I feel that a teammate is what a teammate should be when you talk about the work ethic, the belief in his team, the support of his team, and being supported. And he's a guy that's easy to cheer for. Yuta Watanabe, to me, really embodies everything that an ultimate teammate is. And that's just from what we've known from him, not even being in Toronto yet. Imagine when he gets to Toronto.
Exactly. Oh, the Toronto fans are going to embrace him. And, you know, to Sherm, to that point, you know, the Asian community has really been passionate about basketball. That's something that they don't shy away from. You see it globally, but then also here in Toronto as well. And Paul Jones, you know, I really want to get your thoughts on experiences. And then also let's talk about the bigger picture here as well when it comes to, you know, Asian hate crimes or their impact in the basketball landscape. Because let's be honest, everything is intertwined into one, the way that personally I see it.
I can sum up Asian hate crime in a word, and that's reprehensible. There's just no way that those kinds of things should be going on. There's no room for them in society. The same way there's no room for any kind of racism, but directing it at Asians like that, and I look at what Will and Alex were saying. They need allies too. Anybody who's fighting that specter of racism, whether it be overt or systemic, you need people to speak up. And good on the NBA, good on the Raptors, good on everybody else speaking up, trying to eradicate this Asian hate and the racism against them. And we all have to do our part. And it doesn't matter, the fact that I'm black, you're black, Sherman's black. We're speaking up for ourselves, but we've got to be speaking up for them too. And we're all in the same boat when it comes to that. Roven Yao spoke so beautifully. Roven's a great friend of ours, and who has the right to hate anybody on their journey? And to me, it just has to stop. And the best word I can think of for it is reprehensible. We've got to eradicate it and get rid of it.
Savanna, you said something at the end of that clip with those two guys about the fact that you were clapping because everything they said you could relate to. And that's a key statement, because when you think about it, ultimately, we're all the same. At the end of the day, we're all the same. We're fighting the same battle. And it doesn't make sense for us to not support each other in these situations. And also, when you think about it, listen, an open hand doesn't hit as hard as a fist. So we got to come together and we got to support our Asian brothers and sisters and make sure that they feel loved, they feel valued, and they feel appreciated, because they are. And I think at the end of the day, anybody that goes against that is not only their enemy, they're our enemy. And this is a fight just like our own fight that we're going to have to take up, and we're going to have to fight to the bitter end. But make sure we understand that supporting ourselves is not enough. We've got to support other people that are going through similar situations, and we've got to support them just as vigorously, just as verbally, be just as loud, and use our platforms to make sure that we defend and support them as well. So I really, really feel that we need to get behind all of our Asian brothers and sisters and give them everything they need to feel comfortable and supported, and to understand that they belong right there with us on every level.
Absolutely. They deserve a seat at the table just as much as us. And that's a great point. We need to be just as strong as allies for them as we are advocates for ourselves as well. So I really appreciate your point there, Sherman. Jonesy, going to you, you've had a lot of experiences with working for the Raptors for a while. Please share.
Well, look, in terms of the Asian community, when I think of the Raptors first starting up and being founded, they had a deep history, a big hand in helping form the basis and set the foundation. When I think of some of the first hires, first year of the inaugural season of 95, 96, Doreen Doyle. Doreen worked for the organization for over 20 years. She was like Mama Bear. When guys came in from other cities, she would help them get settled, help find them a place to live, be involved in finding their kids' schools if they were married guys, finding them a pediatrician for their family. And then John Bitov and Isaiah Thomas hired people like Elaine Kwan, who was big in community relations and making sure that the Raptors were out there and received well and helped build the popularity. Somebody like Jamie Nishino, who was involved in the game ops, and we've seen the Raptors game ops grow to one of the best in the NBA. So there's always been that representation all the way up, and currently I look at people of Asian descent like Bobby Webster and Roven Yao and our Asian brothers and sisters, and I know Sherm's going to talk about one that's special to him as well. But it's always been there. We need more of it, and it's important, just the same as it is for every other group, to be represented.
Well, you're right, Jonesy, and this franchise has done a great job in terms of having diversity, on multi levels. So I think when we're talking about the Raptors, and these people become more than just people you work with. They become your friends. They become in somewhat your pseudo family. And I think of a guy you just mentioned in Roven Yao, who has been a close friend of mine, and we talk consistently, and we when we can, we see each other and just have those deep conversations. But also John Lee, the strength and conditioning coach for the Raptors. This is a man who I've been with for 20 plus years. He was our manager on our Olympic team in 2000. So I have a deep, long-standing relationship with him. And you're not going to find a better person than John Lee on the planet. You know, we're seeing on the show right now in terms of pictures, you know, Ray Chow, another guy who I've known for a long time. Jones, that you've known for a long time.
Original.
These guys do amazing things for the franchise. And someone behind the scenes in Annie Cho, who is another woman who has done amazing things for MLSC and the organization and helping in the community. So, look, there's no shortage of Asian brothers and sisters that have done great things in terms of not just their jobs, but beyond their jobs. And there's no room for this hate. And we support all of them. They're like family. We love them. And we've got to continue to let them know that they're valued.
Absolutely. And just to wrap here, you know, I'm grateful for all, you know, the Asian community that has been involved in my life as a player as well. I've had a coach, Jess LaRue, and also, you know, Chloe Mego, who was the team captain back in university, and they've been such positive influences. But just to wrap up the show now, you know, we have to give them their flowers all the time, not just during Asian Heritage Month. This is an ongoing conversation. And on that note, thank you guys, the viewers, for watching another episode of Raptors Today. We'll catch you guys next time.